principals, please remember to do so. I can't figure out the dates that will work for everybody without your schedules. So please get that to me as soon as possible. Number two, second item on my housekeeping list. We have one more screencast that will go live for you at the end of class today or first thing tomorrow. It's on our next topic on statutes. Please make sure to view it and answer the few questions before class next week. It happens to be my favorite screencast. I hope you will enjoy it as well. And last but not least, our plan for today. We have a lot to make up that we didn't get to and I had hoped to last week. So we will start our discussion with a real quick review on your questions regarding restatements. We will dive into law reviews and spend some time talking about that and doing a workshop. We'll then take a brief detour as well as some non-legal resources as well. We'll take a brief detour to catch up on our discussion that we didn't get to last time on treatises, and we will end up basically, we'll actually go down to the library to do a workshop on treatises, come back up, and we will end up with a discussion about the assignment on secondary sources, because we will have finished secondary sources by the end of class today. So as I said, a lot to do. I am going to dive in to get started. So I looked at your questions on restatements. I'm not going to say much more other than to answer those questions, because while they are very important restatements, I think it's very straightforward and not much more need be said. Having said that, I still want to answer your questions. So we are looking at restatements on Westlaw. Of course, they're also on Lexis and Bloomberg. And one of the questions had to do with what's the organization of restatements. So taking a quick look here, restatements start with basically a basic statement of the law. So we're looking at a basic statement about consideration in the restatement of contracts. After the basic statements, the drafters then give a comment. They go into a little bit more detail about what they meant in that basic statement, giving a little more depth to that. And then there are illustrations, basically hypotheticals. How would you apply this basic statement and these illustrations? And then after, so those are the basic sections. After that, we get a little history about how all this particular restatement section came about, and then some citations to cases. So your questions, I found came in three different categories. So first, a little bit of background on a restatement. So I gave you the organization of what a statement contained. Other questions are, where do they come from? What's the difference between restatements and principles of law? The American Law Institute creates restatements. American Law Institute is made up of professors. So some of your professors are actually in ALI. Also some very experienced practitioners, experts in the field. They all get together and go through many, many drafts. It's a very formal, long process to come up with the restatement. And then occasionally they update the restatement. So for instance, I think in contracts we're up to the restatement second or third. I've lost count already. So very interesting question about the difference between restatements of the law and principles of the law. And basically the best answer I can give you is actually on ALI's website. Frequently asked questions. This link is also in the course website. And this very first question, how do the principles differ from restatements? And essentially it has to do with audience. The restatements are geared directly to the courts, and apparently the principles are primarily addressed to legislatures as well as maybe the courts. And then, a very interesting question. Are there different restatements on the same topic? So some by person or group X versus group Y, and the answer is no. There is one restatement of contracts. There's, as I said, first and second. I don't think there's third actually. First and second, but that's just a question of time. Second, they just decided we need to redo this because so much has changed. But it's the same group. It's that ALI. Okay, so the second group of questions having to do with how do we use citing to restatements. The idea of, are there areas of law that are better to use restatements? Are there areas of law that are not so good? And my feeling is the best way to use a restatement is when it applies to your issue. There's not, contracts isn't better than the restatement of torts, isn't better than the restatement of agency or the principles of law in professional responsibility. There's no hierarchy like that. In terms of citing, which again, a different way of using restatements, it's basically appropriate to cite to a restatement when you need to have support for a basic area of law. As I mentioned in the screencast, restatements I think are most useful if you're writing a brief and you have to provide support that a contract requires consideration or restatements. It's really hard to find that sometimes in case law, especially case law in your jurisdiction, because case law tends to be much more specific. So restatement's great for that, for those basic principles. Since restatements are not primary authority, when are they accepted? Are they accepted in every court? Remember the distinction between secondary authority and primary authority. In fact, I don't even like the term secondary authority. I prefer secondary sources. Secondary sources are never authority for courts. They are basically persuasive. So again, to the question of when should I use a restatement, how useful are they? Judges will look to restatements as persuasive authority the same way they will look to other again, authority is kind of misleading, persuasive sources. So maybe to another state's case. If I go to a court and I say, hey, judge, contract requires consideration because Lisa thinks so, just gonna look at me and maybe have some choice comments. However, if I say, hey, judge, this contract requires consideration, look at this restatement drafted by all these experts, the judge is much more likely to be persuaded. He or she doesn't have to accept the restatement's version or accept that my argument that how the restatement says it is how it applies to this particular case, but the judge may be persuaded, just like the judge may be persuaded by an expert who writes a law review article or persuaded by an expert who writes a treatise. Restatements work the same way. A few of you had questions, and I was very pleased to see regarding costs of restatement. I'm glad that you are thinking about the costs of all this, even though it doesn't cost you anything quite yet. Basically, the answer I'm always going to give you anytime you ask me a question about cost is it depends upon your contract. So wherever you wind up working, you need to find out what that contract is. It may be secondary sources aren't included, and yes, if you click on a restatement, and it's the restatement section, by the way, one of you asked, it's not the entire work of the restatement. Every time you click on a particular restatement section, so the one I was looking at on Westlaw, if restatements were into my contract, I get charged if I'm looking at that section of the restatements. So if it's not in your contract, you're going to get charged. If it is in your contract, you won't get charged. You want to find out what your contract is the bottom line for most of the cost questions. And one question, what is the fee difference between researching a restatement and researching a case, if any? Again, the same answer. Your cases, especially in your jurisdiction, you're probably going to have in your contract. Not so definite from another jurisdiction. So again, it depends on your contract. Pretty much the bottom line for most of the what's it going to cost question. Okay, so that was a quick run through restatements. Let's now dive into law reviews. And I'm going to look at law reviews both to review them as research resources, but also as a way of talking about advanced search creation techniques because it works very well for both. And first place I'm going to go is everybody tells me the first I pretty much just go to Google or I go to Google first. So I'm going to Google first. Here is another advanced portion of Google. I showed you an advanced technique last class. So here's an advanced segment of Google you may or may not know about. Google Scholar. Who uses Google Scholar? Oh, good. Few hands. So Google Scholar, as I said, is a separate section. If you do a regular Google search, you will not get the same results as if you do a search in Google Scholar. How do you get to Google Scholar? Of course, you Google Google Scholar, which is what you can see I did here. So doing a search, so once I get to Google Scholar, I have a choice between articles and case law. We'll be talking about case law later in the semester using Google. For now, of course, we're talking about articles. And here is my search in Google Scholar. I'm not going to make you watch me type all that. You'll notice denial coverage, HMO, health maintenance organization in quotes because I want that as a phrase. So another advanced Google search technique. If you want a phrase, put it in quotes. Notice also my choice of terms. platforms. Again, this idea of research thinking. I'm searching articles now. Articles go into a lot of depth about very particular subjects, right? You've all read law review articles for your classes, so you know how detailed they can get. An entire article on a very detailed subject. So I'm going to be a little bit more, when I'm searching articles, I'm going to be a little bit more detailed than I am when I'm searching, say, for treatises. So here you see one example. Again, I'm searching full text. So taking a look at the results. So Google Scholar searches legal articles as well as non-legal articles. So we'll talk about non-legal research later on today, and we'll come back to Google Scholar. You also see here on the left a bunch of links to, actually, I'm going to go back to Anytime here. Bunch of links. Hein Online is a legal database we'll be talking about for articles in just a few minutes, and you see these links. Government health warning, or really a advanced legal research health warning on these links when you are a Google Scholar. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. It has to do with something called open link resolvers, and I'm not even going to go further in the detail for the technology other than to say, if you're up for it, give it a try, but don't go crazy because it's not working. Again, this is a technology that doesn't work perfectly quite yet. Okay, so I'm going to, what I would do is review my list, and I see, and I'm being bibliographically aware, so I'm going to see there's a lot of articles from 1990, 1982. Maybe I'll look at them because they'll give me some background. Of course, I'll know not to rely on them because they're pretty old, but maybe I want to see, I really need to know what the law is also today. So after reviewing my list, I might narrow by date. I'm going to say since 2016, there's no magic to that. I could say 2019, 2020. Obviously, I'll get more the older I get. And in scrolling down, I might see, for example, insurance access in adults with congenital heart disease in the Affordable Care Act era. Well, that's kind of our facts. So I might want to dive in and look at that link. And I get to read the abstract to see if it's of interest. I see it's from a journal called Congenital Heart Disease. One thing I want to point out, on the right hand, you see a little key lock symbol image. I have installed a very useful extension called Unpaywall. Unpaywall, you can use in Chrome and Firefox. I'm not sure about Safari. Last time I checked, you couldn't, but don't quote me on that today. But at least in Chrome and Firefox, you can use Unpaywall. Unpaywall will tell you, is there a free version of this somewhere? So that little lock symbol is telling me, rats, there's no free version. But if there was a little unlock symbol, I'd say, cool, there's a free version. I'd click on it and it would bring me there. So a neat little extension, totally free to make life a little bit easier. Okay, if I were to try to click on the PDF of this link, because right, you want to read the article, what I would get is basically this very messy screen telling me to log in. This is the key to tell me either we at Hofstra don't have access to it, or I need to find another way. And we will come back to this later on to find another way, which I will show you. Other aspect of Google Scholar I would like to show you is going back to our search results. I put in both HMO and Health Maintenance Organization. They mean the same thing, right? One's just the acronym of the other. So if I decide, Google's smart, right? It should know the difference between, or not, that there is no difference between HMO and Health Maintenance Organization. So if I take out my phrase and do a search and scroll through, my results are somewhat different. I'm not finding that article on congenital heart defects. So what gives, right? This is where we come and talk about the fact that basically computers are stupid. You need to think about the words that are expressing your ideas. Computers don't know that HMO and Health Maintenance Organization are the same thing. Google doesn't. Lexis and Westlaw sometimes can be a little smarter than Google, sometimes not quite as smart as Google. So this is very inartfully phrased, but it says what I wanted to say. Law is words. Law is comprised of words. So when you're doing research, you're typing in words. And the quality of what you type in is going to directly affect, in fact, be determinative of what you get out. So you want to start to think about, are there alternate ways of expressing my ideas so the computer will pick it up? So one of my favorite examples, this adorable little critter here. For all you dog folks, please forgive me. As I mentioned, I'm a cat folks. This adorable critter here, her name is Natasha. Of course, it's a cat. Cats are also known as felines. If I am doing research on tort law regarding cats, he would never bite a soul, but other cats do bite. I, of course, would use the word cat. Do I need to use the word feline? I need to think about if I'm searching cases, are judges likely to use the word feline? If I'm searching secondary sources, am I likely to find the word feline? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I need to think about that. Okay, another aspect of words we want to think about. If I say the word fire, what do you think of? Arson? Anybody else? There you go. So same word, spelled the exact same way. Two totally different meanings. Trust me, Google, Lexis, Westlaw is not smart enough to know that you're thinking termination of employment and not something that causes arson. So you need to include in your search maybe some context. Maybe you want to add the word employment if you're using the word fire, or maybe you just want to say terminate employment. Again, thinking about the words that are expressing your ideas. We already talked about phrases. So if I want Health Maintenance Organization to appear as a single unit, I put it in quotes. In Google, same is true for Lexis and Westlaw. Another more legal phrase that we all know, term of art, self-incrimination. If you want to search self-incrimination, if you're interested in criminal law, you want to put it in quotes. Okay. So those are some things we think about as we're putting fingers to keyboard when we're doing our research, whether it's in secondary sources, primary sources, on Google, wherever. So let's dive into, we'll start with Westlaw just because I started with Lexis last time. Let's dive into Westlaw to see how we're going to apply this. So as I said, I'm going to show you this in the context of law reviews. So as I am trying to convince you, hopefully successfully, when we're searching secondary sources, rather than just search everything on Westlaw or narrow down to the exact one we're talking about, because maybe there are other sources that are not law reviews that are good, I'm going to start with secondary sources. I'm also not going to limit to a state just yet, because think about for law reviews, because that's what we're going to look at. It's very possible that a journal in Connecticut, a journal in California, a journal in Montana could talk about New York law. I have found examples of that. Likewise, for those of you who work on journals, I'm sure here at Hofstra, I'm sure you publish articles that talk about laws outside of New York State, right? You want to be able to find those articles regardless of where they originate. So I wouldn't limit my state, especially with law reviews. So what I would do is go to secondary sources and try my search. So I'm going to type in a very simple search, and I am not using any of the Health Maintenance Organization in quotes quite yet, because sometimes Lexis and Westlaw are kind of smart. They're not as smart as we are, but Lexis and Westlaw will often pick up alternatives. So you might want to start with your search and see if you need to use, you want to learn from your search to see if there are other terms that are used for the words that you are typing in. Okay, so as I said, I want to start with secondary sources and then decide, okay, I'm ready to see if I've gone through my results. I'm ready to see if law reviews, because I know they discuss very specific issues, I'm ready to see if there are any good ones that will help increase my understanding of my issue. So I'm going to narrow to my particular type of secondary source. And remember to apply, of course. And again, I would scroll through, and there are a few advanced features that I might want to use in law reviews. And the first one that I will show you is search in results. So don't worry about the number of results you get unless it's 0. Obviously, 0 is not good. But you're not going to look at 1,800 LARA views. You want to find those results, again, that are relevant to your issue, that are going to increase your understanding. So one tool to do that is search within results. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You can do a term search within your results. So if I know, okay, I've been doing research, I read some stuff on Google, I've seen some encyclopedias, I know I have to worry about ERISA preemption. So I want to just right now, not always, because there are other issues I have to research too, but right now I want to focus on ERISA preemption. So what Wesla's telling me here, I don't know if you can see it in the back, search within results gives me a nice search box. It says show Boolean instruction. So if I click on that plus sign, put phrases in quotes, use and, use terms and connectors. So what that's telling me is I have to use what are called Boolean connectors. And that's the handout that you all picked up when you first walked in. And I'm going to review that really quickly now. So the way I have designed this handout, which is also on the course website, by the way, anybody need? Pass around, everybody got it? Okay. So what I've designed is on the course website under secondary sources is this chart gives you the connectors of what you will need 99% of the time. The rest of the pages will give you a little more detail about these connectors as well as other connectors that you'll use the other 1%. I'm just going to go over these really useful ones. I don't want to confuse the issue. We don't have the time, and really it's the best use of all of our time. So again, we already talked about quotes. The and connector. So when I'm using search with results, if I want to have the same words anywhere in the document, so if I want to have terminate and employment, I would type in terminate space. You put spaces between your words and connectors. The word and space employment. The word or is where you'll use for synonyms like cat or feline. You'll see my favorite connectors, what are called proximity connectors, because here where we start to connect ideas. So the English language, we speak in ideas. Very narrow ideas are sentences, right? So we can search words within the same sentence. So I can search employment /s terminate. So I would have to see employment within the same sentence as terminate. /p, not surprisingly, is within the same paragraph. And not, if you want to exclude a term, you would use and not. Be very, very careful, though. I use it very, very sparingly because you never know when a judge, an author, is going to use the term that you're excluding. They might say, and I am talking about termination of employment. I am not talking about fire. I'm not talking about arson. If you say and not arson, you're going to lose that document, even though that's exactly what you want to be reading about. So use it very, very sparingly. /n, I wouldn't worry about it. If you can choose any number you want. So if you want something within 3 words of another word, that's /n. The exclamation and the star are the same. Basically, they're called truncation. That's the other thing you're going to use a lot. So I have already started to type in. Again, I'm not sure you can see it. ERISA, that's our term. Space, remember spaces between your connectors. A lot of people forget that. /p, so I'm guessing I'm going to be a little bit broader. I'm going to try to get a little bit more. So within the same paragraph, more than if I would use within the same sentence. It's a guess. I'm guessing that maybe ERISA will be in the same paragraph as preemption, but not in the same sentence. We'll find out. You learn from your search. And then my last word, preempt, exclamation. Because the word could be preempt, it could be preempted, it could be preempting, it could be preemption. And I'm probably missing a couple of other alternatives there. You don't have to worry about it. You just put the exclamation and you're done. So for instance, terminate employment. You might put terminate, A-T exclamation. So you get terminating because there's no E. And same thing with employment. You might put employ exclamation. So you get employer, employee, employment, employees. All the other variations of that word. Okay. Any questions? Marlon and Luke.
So for employment, yeah. So if I put employee, would I put the exclamation more on after the Y to get employment, or you know what I mean? Like, where does the exclamation mark go?
Okay. Forgive my handwriting. EMPLOY exclamation. If I type in EMPLOYEE, I won't get EMPLOYER because there's no extra E in there. You do it at what's called the root of the word. So my example before, in my terrible handwriting, terminate. I'm doing it, even though terminate is not a word, I'm doing it before the E because I want terminating, and there's no E in there in terminating. Everybody get it? Terrible handwriting notwithstanding. Luke. Transitive, yes.
So if I wanted to look up cases in New York, but I wanted to search for some reason only to have ERISA and then a /P, right? So I want ERISA/P, but then I want that to be together with preempt and New York. So I write preempt just like you have, then I do and New York, but I want the preempt and New York together. So I put parentheses around the preempt and New York. Will it search that term as like a phrase?
Okay, so you want to put in parentheses. You're a little bit ahead of me, so I'm going to answer your question now, and then I'm going to review it and show you an example in a little while. To answer your question, you want to put the parentheses around what you want as a group.
Right, so just say freezing X, Y, and Z. I want Y and Z to be together, so I put parentheses around the Y and the Z.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
And hold the thought for a little while, and then I will show you an example.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, so let's do this search. And I have to apply because on Westlaw, I always have to remember to apply. Now, there are some folks who think, because now we can use natural language, that, oh, Boolean connectors, you don't need to know that anymore. The thing is, you do. You need to do it for search within results. I'm going to show you an advanced search feature where you need to know those Boolean connectors as well. And sometimes what will happen is your natural language searches won't give you what you want. Sometimes you really want to say, Westlaw, I want it in the same sentence. So now you know how to do it. Okay, so here are results, and you can see that we went from over 1,800 results down to 800. Okay, so I am now going to show you that advanced search. So what you see here, so back here on Westlaw, at the very home page, I could choose advanced. You want to choose your type of material unless you are searching all of Westlaw. The reason for that is you get fewer choices here. Now I'm scrolling through really quick on this basic screen. I'm going to show you what I'm recommending very strongly that you do. So secondary sources, now up here, I'm going to go to advanced. The reason for that is that now that I'm in secondary sources, I get more choices of fields. Fields are just different parts of the documents. So depending on the type of document, you get different fields. So here in law review articles, I get fields like the title of the article, citation, the author of the article, something called preliminary or source. If you don't know what those fields mean, Westlaw gives you a little picture here. If I click on this PDF, it'll tell you what Westlaw means by preliminary and source. So we know that law reviews have titles, and those titles tell us what the entire article is about, right? So sometimes if you're doing research on Lexis and Westlaw, and you're looking for articles and you're just not finding exactly what you want, the title, advanced search, title search can be really useful. Emily was telling me earlier about some notes she's writing on Slayer rules. So Emily, this is one of the techniques I would suggest to you. Search in the title. Now, I'm not going to show that example because I want to show a different one, but go back, go to advanced search and see if you can find law review articles on the Slayer rule. What I'm going to show you is on our topic, and the reason I'm going to show you on our topic is, again, to review connectors and to answer Luke's question. So connectors, so I've got LIAB, L-I-A-B, LIAB isn't a word, at least not that I know of, exclamation. That's how I get libel, liability. And again, that's way at the root. So, because libel, L-I-A-B-L-E, is different than liability with all the I's in there. Didn't know you were getting a spelling lesson today, did you? Okay, so I want any form of the word libel within the same paragraph. And again, I have liab, exclamation, space. For some reason, people always forget to put the spaces between words and connectors. So space / P, I'm guessing a little bit broader within the same paragraph rather than narrower within the same sentence. And Luke, here's the answer to your question, except I left off the other parentheses. Always make sure you have the same number left and right parentheses if you're using them. I want libel to be within the same paragraph as this group of terms. And these are alternative terms. These are synonyms. HMO, or. So again, or is my connector for synonyms. HMO, or, in quotes, because it's phrase, health maintenance organization. Or, we've talked about the term, we've seen the term managed care. Again, also in quotes because it's a phrase. Close parentheses. So this way, I'm telling Westlaw, find me only in the title, because that's my advanced field search, the word libel or whatever form, within the same paragraph as any of these possible terms that are expressing these words, that are expressing my idea about this organization that manages healthcare. Any questions? Luke, did I answer your question regarding the parentheses? Marlon?
Is it redundant to put quotation marks against around the HMO, or?
It's not necessary. It won't hurt.
Okay.
So with the one thing, again, with the parentheses, always make sure you've got the same number of left ones as right ones. Otherwise, Westlaw will kick it back and tell you to do that. Same thing as Lexis. Also, don't worry too much about it. If you put parentheses in there and it really Westlaw really doesn't need it, Westlaw will still do the search. Questions? Okay, so I'll run this search real quick. You see what Westlaw fills it in up here for me. So all I have to do is run the search. Okay, a couple of other advanced features. One is the sort. So Westlaw by default will sort by relevance. Westlaw is guessing what's most relevant first. You can change that. You can say by date. This will sometimes really work nicely because you'll get the most recent first, and the most recent will be really useful. Sometimes the most recent will be totally irrelevant. Give it a try. The other feature that Westlaw has, not Lexis, is most cited. So which article has been cited the most times? Hopefully pretty straightforward. And what I haven't done here is limit to law reviews, so I will do that here because that's what we're talking about. So I'm now most cited with my title, advanced title search. And so this most cited, managed care organizations and patient injury, rethinking liability, sounds good, right? But it's from 1997. So yes, I could read it to educate myself, knowing not to rely on it. One other advanced technique I can use for older articles is I can use this citing references tool. And what that will tell me are references later on after this was published that cite to my article. I'm going to go directly to secondary sources because that's what we're talking about. I could look at cases or their other category here as well. And here we see different sources, again, after 1997, that cite to our article. Westlaw actually has a neat little tool. It allows me to sort by date if I want to. You don't have to. There are usually not that many. Actually, there are 72 secondary sources, so it might not be a bad thing. And so I can see the most recent secondary sources that cite to this law review article. So even though this is 1997, so kind of dated, I can see others 2017, 2019, that may be useful. Any questions? Let's take a quick look at Lexis for law review articles. Pretty much all of the concepts that I just told you for Westlaw apply to Lexis, which is looks a little bit different. So again, I'm going to narrow to secondary sources. I can do it up here in categories. I tend to do it down here in browse. It doesn't, or explore, it doesn't make a difference. Again, I can go more specific, but as a general rule, as a general strategy, I'm going to search secondary sources just because I don't really care what kind of secondary source I find, as long as I find something that helps explain the issue. So I'm going to start my general search. And then narrow by category. Since we're talking about law reviews, I would, of course, review first, see what I can learn there, and then say, okay, let's see if they're good law reviews to go into more detail. You'll see I have the option to sort, just like I do on Westlaw, with the exception there is no sorting by most cited, which is too bad. So if I were evaluating Lexis, and I'm going to ask you in your assignment, which we'll talk about later, to evaluate the sources that you use, an example of that kind of evaluation is most cited was really useful on Westlaw. Lexis doesn't have it, so for that particular purpose, Lexis isn't as good. Okay, so we have search within results on Lexis. Again, the same exact concepts apply. So I am going to, in my search box here, type in ERISA /P PREEMPT exclamation. So ERISA within the same paragraph as whatever form of preemption is there. Tell Lexis to do the search. And again, just like Westlaw, to do that search within results, you must use connectors within your phrases. It doesn't do natural language. So if I say ERISA preempt, Lexis will find, without connectors, Lexis will find some stuff, but it won't, it'll actually just interpret your space as an and. Okay, just as we saw on Westlaw, any questions? Yes, Dolores.
On the filters, scroll down a little, I see both sided, so that's just like if you want a particular source to cite to this.
That's a good question. That it looks like it is sorting for you what's most cited in the results.
Oh.
I will be honest, I haven't used that. I'm going to write myself a note on that. But at first glance, that's what it looks like. Hopefully I can read my horrible handwriting. Great question. Okay, so as we saw on Westlaw, we also have an advanced search. What I happen to like more about Lexis, and again, this is by way of giving you an example of evaluation, is here on the home screen or from any other search screen, I can click on advanced. And if I know I want secondary sources, all I have to know to do is scroll down and I can select a specific content type. I love that. I don't have to remember to first choose secondary sources. And not only that, I can get specific to law reviews, not just secondary sources. So clicking on law reviews, again, I see Lexis calls the different parts of the document segments. Westlaw calls them fields. You'll see our examples of the different search connectors. Again, when you're just like Westlaw, when you're doing advanced search, you need to use search connectors. So I can do the same title search that we did on Westlaw. It appears up here in my search box. And here are our results on Lexis. And scroll through. Here's one from 2003, Health Law Symposium. What if you could sue your HMO managed care liability beyond the ERISA shield? Sounds pretty relevant. No, 2003 is kind of old. You may or may not remember we keep on running across this Aetna case, Aetna v. Davila, that was 2004. So you might be a little concerned about that 2003. So again, you can read it to educate yourself. You can also take a look on Lexis to find later documents that cite to this article using Shepherd-Eyes this document. So same idea as citing references, it's just called Shepherd-Eyes on Lexis. And now the trick on Lexis, you get to the screen and it says no documents found in citing decisions. And you say, hey, wait a minute. You need to remember on Lexis, and I always see that yellow box and say, hey, wait a minute. And then I remember, oh yeah, go to other citing sources tucked there on the left, and then I get other articles, not decisions. So there were no citing decisions. There are no judicial decisions that Lexis found that cited that article, but there are lots of other law reviews that cited this article. 25 of them, in fact. And you see them here. So a way, again, of finding more recent law reviews from a good but old law review on Lexis. Any questions? One more feature on Lexis that I like to show you. These topic summaries. So in various different documents, you will see, if you look on the right, something called topic summaries. You won't always see them. It's hit or miss. But when you do, they're worth checking out. Although, if, again, this is one of those, it depends what's in your plan. They can be very expensive. But for now in law school, they're in our plan, as it were. Pretty much everything's in our plan. So it's worth checking out very briefly. Because basically what Lexis has done is pulled for various summaries that it's created. It's pulled together resources from all different areas in Lexis. So you can see here it talks about one topic, torts, products liability, and scrolling down we've got torts, malpractice, and professional liability. There are actually several of these that look like they might apply to our client. I'll show you the pensions and benefits law, civil litigation, suits to recover plan benefits. And it's essentially just giving you some basic background. So the plaintiff is empowered to bring this action by section 1132 of ERISA, which provides in relevant part a civil action may be brought. So if we had investigate this, what we would learn for our client is, okay, we may have this whole preemption problem with regard to bringing our action in state court, but oh, look, there's a federal action that we may be able to bring, even if we are preempted by ERISA from bringing an action in state court. So on my to-do list, I am going to write in probably pretty big letters or type, check out section 1132 in ERISA, because I have learned that from our topic summary, and then it gives us references to seminal cases, elements, a little more detail about that section 1132 of ERISA. Any questions about law reviews, advanced searching on Lexis, or any other kind of law review searching on Lexis? Okay. I'm not going to show you law reviews on Bloomberg because Bloomberg's coverage of law reviews is not wonderful. Lexis and Westlaw have far better coverage of law reviews. You can get restatements on Bloomberg, like all of the three services. When you're looking for a particular title, just type in that title in the search bar and it will pull up possible sources. So that's what you would do for Bloomberg for restatements. Also, you could do that on Lexis and Westlaw. I am going to show you now, though, a different database for law reviews. And that's a database called Hein Online. Any of you use Hein Online? I would think some of you who is mostly for journals. What else? Oh, really? Hein Online in undergrad. Nice. Okay. Interesting. I'm guessing many of you raised your hands. It's for getting PDFs of journal articles, which is why you would use Hein Online pretty much. I'm going to show the rest of you how you get there. So here on the Law Library homepage, we have, if you scroll down a little bit, you will see a link to Hein Online under this orange, yellow, whatever color that is, heading, online resources. So Hein Online is one of these resources that you need to authenticate to. So Hein Online is slightly different than law.com in that when you're on campus, even on your laptop, so you can go through the wireless network, you'll still get there. If you go home, so if you're doing your assignment and looking at Hein Online at home, you will need to go through that easy proxy. Andrea asked me an excellent question earlier. How long do we have access to these databases that we authenticate through easy proxy? And the answer is as long as you're a student. So you have access to Hein Online, law.com, and these other easy proxy databases until you graduate. So one of the databases, the first one we'll talk about, many of you have already used, is the Law Journal Library. So the thing about Hein Online is, unlike Lexis and Westlaw, it has the actual PDFs. So what's good about that, in addition to using it for your journal work, is that if an article has a chart or a picture or a table, Lexis and Westlaw are terrible about showing you that. Sometimes it'll just have the words table, and it won't show you the table. It's really annoying. Hein Online is one place to find that. Another good thing about Hein Online, you will occasionally get references to articles that are on the older side. Lexis and Westlaw tend to go back only to the 1990s-ish for most of the journal titles that they cover. So if you have an article you're looking for that's older than 1990, it depends on your issue. There may be a reason. Hein Online would be good for that as well. One feature on Hein Online, if you are using it to look for a particular journal title, is the citation navigator. So if I click on the citation tab, you see the citation navigator, and if you know the citation, you can type it right in here. It makes it easy to find. I would not use Hein Online for general research, searching for articles on a particular topic. Lexis and Westlaw's search capabilities are far more sophisticated. However, if you are somewhere where you don't have access to Lexis and Westlaw, you've graduated from law school, and for whatever reason, you're somewhere where they do have Hein Online, Hein Online is a flat rate. So once your organization subscribes to Hein Online, you don't have to worry about costs. So if you do find yourself needing to search Hein Online, as I said, the search is a little bit clunkier, and this is true for any new database. I can't show you every single database out there, obviously, and there'll be new ones that come along after we're done. Get in the habit with new databases of looking at the help. Hein Online has help up here. You could get search help here, and Hein will tell you which search connectors to use and the fact that you need to put them in capital letters, which is not so for Lexis and Westlaw or Bloomberg. So again, that help can be really useful. When would you use Hein Online? As I said, mostly when you have a known article that you need to get to and you can't for whatever reason on Lexis or Westlaw, or it has a chart that you need to see that's not on Lexis or Westlaw, or it's just too old. Any questions about Hein Online? Okay, another resource for finding articles is the Index to Legal Periodicals. So with full text searching and with Google Scholar, a lot of people no longer bother with indexes. And I can understand why. They're not full text, they're trickier to use. So the time to use an index is when you're not succeeding on Lexis and Westlaw. How many of you have searched for law review articles on a particular topic and the results you get use your search terms but have nothing to do with your topic? Has that happened to anybody? Okay, I'm seeing some heads. Index, if you were to come to the reference desk, I would point you to the Index to Legal Periodicals. So Emily, another source might be worth checking for your topic. To get there, here again on the Law Library homepage, I would scroll down to this Find Research Guides and Online Resources, the blue. I would type in Index to Legal Periodicals and click Submit. It would search our online resources and get me to this screen here. And I need to remember to search on the link that's under the word link, not resource title. This is just an informational. They designed the database this way, not how I would have suggested, but anyway, so just know to click on this link on the right. And you get to this index with the 3 boxes. If any of you are following along, you may be asked to authenticate through Easy Proxy. I already did so earlier in the day, so it remembers me. Now we have worked out our Easy Proxy authentication for those of you having trouble, so this should work for you. So this 3-box format or this multi-box format is a typical format you see for different databases. So we're now searching an index. And we need to think a little bit differently. We need that research thinking. An index is the kind of opposite of a law review article. Law review article is full text. It goes into a lot of detail, so it'll use very specific words. An index only searches the information about your articles. So the title, the author, certain subject descriptors. Basically, the index puts together a whole list of legal subjects, A to Z, and assigns each article those subjects. And we'll look at those in a second. So your research thinking, the terminology you're going to use is a little bit different. You're going to be a bit more general. So I am going to, in each search box, if you leave select a field, it'll search all of the fields. So I'm going to use our HMO. And then I am going to type in LIAB star. How do I know to use the star? How would you know, more importantly, to use the star? Again, because I want libel, liability, we talked about truncation. I figured out how to use the star because I followed my advice and checked the help first. And I looked at the search syntax and learned that their truncation symbol, you can't use the exclamation, you have to use a star. So again, new database, check out the help for the search techniques. Okay, and once we have done that, we get our results. And scroll through, and again, this would be, I wouldn't use the index every research project. I would use it when I can't find articles on Lexis or Westlaw. And I still find it interesting that students and attorneys and all the people I help at the reference desk do find useful articles this way when full text isn't working for them. So an advanced feature worth knowing about on the index to legal periodicals is this subject listing on the side, because that shows us these subject headings that were assigned to each and every article. And so I found how many here? 91, not that many to look through, but if I want to hone in on what I'm interested in, which of course is what you want to do, I can look at all the subjects that were assigned to these articles that came up in my search, and I can tell the index, okay, just find me the ones that have these subjects assigned. So find me the ones that have malpractice liability. That's just, so I'm just checking off the relevant subjects. Healthcare industry, federal preemption, fiduciary responsibility. Could that be something that I want to think about? Health maintenance, malpractice, maybe even medical malpractice. See, I don't want Texas, right? So I'm going to skip that one. Health insurance. And I could continue down, but I'm sure you get the idea. So I update that. And so I've limited my results a little bit, but I've honed in on those subjects that were assigned to my articles that are of interest to me. Now, some of them you'll notice don't have a PDF symbol, and some of them do. So here's an example. If you don't see if you see the PDF, click on it, and you'll see the PDF. That's nice. If you don't see the PDF, then maybe you will need to find this article someplace else. You could go, maybe it's on Lexis and Westlaw. Copy and paste the title and plug it in Lexis and Westlaw. Maybe you need to go to Hein Online, get the citation, so you can use that citation navigator. So this is one reason why indexes are less convenient and people prefer them less, certainly understandably, but if they help you find something you couldn't otherwise find, they're still worth talking about, in my humble opinion. Any questions? Okay, so let's do our first workshop of the day on law reviews. And as I mentioned, we're tight on time, so I'm going to keep you to strict time. So there are bold questions and non-bold questions, like bold-faced names and non-bold-faced names. So start with the bold-faced questions, and if you have time, then go to the other ones. And do try to get to the question I highlight, which is question 6. Oh, actually, which is the index to legal periodicals question, just because I want to give you a chance to practice using that since it's less familiar. So for some more in-depth research projects, you may find yourself needing to educate yourself in a non-legal area. An example with our client is maybe you need to learn more about how health insurance works, about the business of health insurance. Some of you mentioned you're going to go into personal injury, so you may need to learn a little bit more about medicine in those areas. Some of you are interested in business, you may need more business research. So I'm going to show you some resources that are available here at Hofstra. What I haven't mentioned to you is that you have access to these databases like law.com, Hine Online, until you graduate. However, as alumni, once you graduate, you are always, always, always welcome to come back to the library. Now, I know some of you intend to go further afield, so that's not going to be very convenient. But for those of you who stay in the area, you are welcome to come back, and you would have access to these resources here in the library. And maybe you'll have access to them wherever you go, so they're worth knowing about. Okay, so for non-legal research, so if you were an undergrad or in the business school or any of the other graduate programs, you would want to start at the Axon Library page. There are any number of ways of getting there. If you have your favorite way, that's totally fine. This is my favorite way. I start, not surprisingly, at the Law Library homepage. I go to Research Instruction, and then I see the Axon Library here on the left. The place I want to get to, so the place you want to get to, however you choose to get there, if it's not this way, is this search library OneSearch. OneSearch is the utility. It's called Universal Federated Searching. It's a way of searching many different databases all at once. Imagine if you could search Lexis and Westlaw and Hine and Law.com all together all at the same time. That'd be kind of neat. This OneSearch allows you to do this for the non-legal databases. Lexis and Westlaw aren't included in this. Hine is, though. And so it's just, your favorite Google type single search bar. So as I suggested, if you needed to get more information, you want to educate yourself on how HMOs are run, you might type in HMO administration. Again, you want to be creative in your search terms. I know I type, but you also have to type it correctly. Administration, there we go. And some of your results might be useful, some may not, because it's searching so many different databases. You're going to get a wide range of types of results. So here's a couple of actually government documents. I can tell that because it's by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services on Medicare. Unfortunately, not particularly useful for our client. Here's something about HMO complaints and appeals. May or may not be useful. It looks like it's on the old side, 1998. So again, you see the evaluation, bibliographic awareness being applied, more on Medicare. But here's something, the Law of Healthcare Administration. It turns out it is an ebook. And here's the PDF link. So that certainly could be worth checking out. So OneSearch is probably the easiest way to do non-legal research here at Hofstra. If you do get a reference to, now we're talking about articles, not books. We'll talk about treatises, books in just a moment. If you do get a reference to an article and you're having difficulty finding it and it's not legal. So in some of the ILP, Index Legal Periodicals results, Daniel, I think it was you found an article that wasn't in Index Legal Periodicals, but you could copy and paste it into Lexis and Westlaw. I'm now talking about non-legal articles. So you may remember back here in our Google Scholar search, we found this article from the journal called Congenital Heart Disease. That's definitely non-legal, right? And it's called Insurance Access in Adults. So there is a tool here at Hofstra called Journal Finder. Anybody used Journal Finder before? Journal Finder is a kind of cool tool for non-legal articles, some legal because it has Hine Online. So back here at the Law Library homepage, And there are other places to find this link as well. I will find Journal Finder scrolling down a little bit. You can also find it at that Axon Library page we went to. And actually, a couple of you found this before. And I'm going to put in the title of my journal, not the article. Journal Finder does journal titles. So I'm going to put in congenital. And then you see actually Journal Finder figures it out for me happily. And what this is telling me is that, yes, we have this in one of our databases here at Hofstra. I don't have to worry about which one. It's called Academic Search Complete, which is fine. And I can take a look at that. Now, what I will want to do is track, now that I know that we can access this here at Hofstra, I will want to track down that article. I might want to search within the publication, and now I can search the journal title, or I can see if I can track it down by citation. Any questions about that? Okay, so that's using Journal Finder. You might also want to remember, if you do have a journal title, and this is true for any type of, or if you do have an article title, I'm sorry, if you have an article title, whether you find it on Indexed Legal Periodicals for legal or non-legal, remember that unpaywall extension I told you about earlier. Okay, so that's a little bit of non-legal research for you. There's one other option that is available to everybody, whether you're here at Hofstra after you graduate, and that is your public library. You all live somewhere, which means you all have a public library somewhere. For those of you who live in New York State, anywhere in New York State, here on Long Island, the city, upstate, wherever you wind up or are now, you actually have access to the New York Public Library. You have access to their databases. The way to do that, though, is you actually have to show up to the New York Public Library, which is kind of fun to visit. Got the big lions in front. It's a really neat building if you're into buildings. You have to show up there when they're open and apply for a card and fill out the forms, and you do have to do it in person. You can't do it online, unfortunately. But once you do, you get a nice card, and it has a little barcode on the back, and that's your number to access their databases. I am going to show you how that works for my public library, because you also live somewhere either in New York or another state. So I happen to live in Long Beach. So if I go to the Long Beach Public Library, and again, I just Googled it to get there, and I can sign into their e-library. And here you see in their e-library, they have some neat stuff. They have ebooks. So if I want to read some ebooks of all sorts, I could stream movies if I wanted to. So there are other nice uses for reasons to get yourself a library card wherever you live. We are, however, going to do the possibly slightly less fun research aspect of our public library offerings. And you see this databases link. So I would scroll down, and here are the different subjects. So I might be interested in, again, educating myself more about health and medicine. And I can see that the different databases that are available, there's a general one called Gale and a virtual reference library. Here's a very interesting gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender issues collection, if that was an area of interest. For our client, probably I would go to the Health Reference Center Academic. And here is where I would enter my library number. So that's that barcode number. So bear with me while I type this in, because as you've seen, I'm a terrible typist, particularly not good to try to do this while I'm talking. Oh. Keep your fingers crossed that I managed to do it correctly. Hey, we're in. And so here's a database. Not going to add that. And so now I'm in a new database, and I get to figure out how to search it. So I can do subject, topic finder, and I will do my best figured out. So that's the listing of publications. Actually, I don't want to do that. So again, you just have to kind of follow your nose with a new database. But this would be a way of doing non-legal research. Actually, there's some law databases. They're not that great, especially when we have access to the really great ones. But this is a way for you to have access to databases of all sorts wherever you live. You just have to find your library and find out what their process is to apply. Usually you do have to go there. I had to go to Long Beach Library as well to get that card. And as I mentioned, of course, you are always welcome to come back to Hofstra if you are in the area. Any questions about non-legal research? That was admittedly a rather brief introduction, but hopefully that gives you a sense of where to access this material and the fact that these databases are available. Okay, so I'm now going to jump back to catch us up on treatises. So as they say on some of the fun TV shows previously on our show. So previously, when we were talking about treatises, we had looked at Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg. We had talked about ways of finding treatises, either by typing in a search and narrowing by source, just as we've been doing for other types of secondary sources. We could also just type in a title if we know that. We looked at one very, very useful tool for using treatises, and that was the table of contents. I am now going to show you the table of contents again, and a different tool, and how you might use treatises in print. And ironically enough, I'm going to show you how to use treatises in print on the computer. And the way I'm going to do that is the Hofstra Library Catalog. So again, here on the Law Library homepage, I'm going to scroll down past our online blue box, down to our Search Library Catalog green box, and I'm going to type in a search, healthcare law. So library catalogs. A few of you in the treatises screencast had some library catalog questions. These days, the library catalog isn't the best place to do research, to find treatises that you don't know about. I'm probably going to lose my librarian license for saying that. So if you repeat, no, I'm just kidding. I won't get fired. But I think a lot of librarians would disagree. These days, with what's available on services like Lexis and Westlaw in terms of treatises, that's where you're all going to go first. Now, if you don't have any secondary sources in your plan, that's where you might want to come to the library and see what we have available, either in print or available online. And the way you do that is in the catalog. You could either try a keyword search, or if you had a particular title, a title search. And so if I'm looking for healthcare law, and again, because a catalog is very similar in look and feel and strategy to the index, to legal periodicals and other indexes. So we have this single box I could look at. If I went to the advanced search, I'd see those 3 boxes. And again, you do a more general search because I'm not searching the full text in a catalog. I'm only searching the information about the books, the titles, the authors, the subjects that are assigned. So I've done a very general search using the terms healthcare law. And scrolling down, I see a couple of entries here: contemporary issues in healthcare law and ethics, ebook, and contemporary issues, healthcare law and ethics, Axon Reserve Room. So when I see an actual location that's bricks and mortar, that tells me it's print. And the call number tells me where to find it in the location. So this location is Axon. That means Axon Library. Obviously, law would mean law library. And then the call number would tell me exactly how to find it. So that's the information you would need to find a print treatise. We will be going down to the library in a few minutes to find print treatises. Ebook is, well, we all know what ebook is. And what I'm going to show you is the ebook version of this title, so I can show you how print works. So here we see the particular title, and to get to ebooks here at Hofstra, I have to use the catalog, so that's another reason to use the catalog. The location and call number aren't useful because location is not a real place, it's ebook. But if I click on this link, connect to, that will get me to the ebook. And that actually gets me to the same database host as Index Legal Periodicals. Don't worry about that. It's just why it looks familiar. But here I see the PDF and full text. And actually, as I scroll down, I can see the ever useful table of contents. So we looked at the table of contents on Lexis and Westlaw. Here's what it might look like in print. So I might want to see the general table of contents. I might want to drill down to get a sense of what this title contains. So managing and regulating healthcare system. Actually, we are probably more interested in patient care issues. So here's some explanation of the law of tort liability, legal ethical issues, refusal of care, and legal ethical issues in health insurance and managed care. So I might be able to find useful sections looking at the table of contents. We already talked about that, showed you a little bit of that in the screencast as well. Also, we have an index. Maybe the table of contents helps, maybe it doesn't. If I'm looking for a specific idea, a specific term, I might turn to the index. So, Emily, if I were looking at a treatise, I might turn to the index for your particular area of interest if I found a treatise, say, on criminal law or on, I guess, estates. I'm going to go to H for HMO because I know that I'm interested in finding out about healthcare law and HMO. And so here's what the index would look like in print. So instead of clicking, you would turn typically to the back of a book in print, or sometimes if the title is multi-volume, you'd go to the last volume in print. And then you find the part labeled index and you look up whatever term you want. In our instance, healthcare, HMO, health maintenance organizations, and I just read through and find where it is. So here I see health maintenance organization. I see corporate negligence, maybe. Negligence could be possible. Page 196, these references are just to pages. ERISA immunity, 197 to 198. Okay, so I'm getting a couple of pages that I want to take a look at. So in print, I just turn to those pages, but since we're in an ebook, I'm going to jump to that page. So once I'm at the page, I'm going to kind of want to orient myself. I'm in the middle of a sentence here, right? So I'm going to try to scroll up a little, scroll down a little. On a page, I might, if I don't see the section on the page, the beginning of the section on the page, I might turn back a little, turn a couple of pages forward. So scrolling down, I see, okay, malpractice in the context of cost containment and managed care. So that sounds pretty relevant. So here I am in my treatise, and it talks about legal principles discussed, health. So it's just talking about the HMO. In addition, several aspects of cost containment, managed care have significant implications in applying law of medical malpractice. First aspect, malpractice litigation, use of financial incentives for physicians to reduce the use of expensive tests and treatments. That's what we're talking about, right? Our client couldn't get an expensive treatment with a cardiologist. To reduce the cost of providing healthcare services, some managed care organizations, there's another term I want to know about, give financial incentives to physicians to withhold, basically to withhold care. So again, here I found the treatise. I used the index on a term we knew about, HMO, to turn to the page. I looked around to see where the relevant section started, either scrolling or turning the page back, or scrolling and turning the page forward. And that's how we would use an index and table of contents in a print treatise. So I realized that showing you online in an ebook is not actually using print. And yes, you may still some days have to use print. Again, not all treatises are available in ebooks. If you wind up in an organization where you don't have access to treatises on Lexis and Westlaw, and you do need to do some in-depth secondary source research, you may want to come to a library, and a lot of times what you'll need to use is a good old-fashioned print ebook. So we're going to get a little bit of practice using that now. I'm going to pass around another workshop for treatises. What we are going to do is, bear with me here. we're going to take a break, and then I am going to ask you to meet me downstairs in front of the library at 5 of, and I will take you to where we will congregate, and I will have you go find a treatise, use it briefly, and then we're going to come back up to finish class so I can explain assignment 2 to you. So meet me, if you would, at 5:55 downstairs. Bring your laptops, very important. We will be starting with the library research guide, and I'll tell you all how to get there when we get going. You also want to bring something to write with so you can fill out the sheet. So basically it'll ask you to download, I'll save it, and if all goes well, it'll open, and you will see exactly what we are looking at in print. And as I said, the print is really not necessary. I'm just giving it to you now so you can see. So you will download the Word document, you will fill it out. You will see there are a lot of tables in there. This is something new for me. I learned actually from a student last year. For answering some of the questions, because I have a lot of parts to questions, she made a table. And I thought, not only was it easier for me to look at and see her answers, but it meant that she was much less likely to miss some of the parts and subparts that I put in there. So I'm hoping this is going to help you all out as well as helping me out. So please do use the charts. I will be very interested to hear if you're finding them impossible and you hate them, then I won't use them again. I have a hunch, though, that you won't. But please give them a try. So we have 5 assignments for the semester. They're all required for each of the main modules. So this is in secondary sources. And I have given you a different hypothetical than our classroom hypothetical. So this is not ERISA, I promise. And as someone mentioned, it's really more helpful to have the hypothetical in print. So you have it in print, and obviously when you download. If we have time at the end, we'll do a quick issue spotting. Otherwise, you'll get a chance to practice it on your own. This will be the hypothetical that we use for all 5 assignments. So you'll get a chance to see how this problem looks in secondary sources, then when we look at statutes, cases, and so forth. So as I said, I will ask you to email me your Word document by the due date, which is 2 weeks from today at 3 p.m. There are a few questions that have word limits. I ask you to keep within those word limits. It really shouldn't be a problem, but I want you to think a little bit and not just repeat back everything you heard. So that's why I asked for the word limit. I give you my email address. Okay, that you may work together on this. Perfectly fine for the assignments. However, make sure you give me your own answers where appropriate. How do you know where that's appropriate? If I'm asking you for a particular title, yes, if you're working together, you may come across the same title. If I'm asking you for what search you used, use different searches. If I'm asking you for evaluations, tell me how would you evaluate these 5 different resources, use your own evaluation. No need to blue book. I wouldn't know the difference. I'm terrible at blue booking. However, give me enough information. So if I see you're talking about an ALR article, give me enough information that I can find it on Lexis and Westlaw. So give me the name of the ALR article. Like remember, we found the one third-party payor. So give me the name and then give me the citation. I think it was something like 76 ALR 5th, page 737. So I see the name, so I see what it's about, and I can see the citation, so I can pull it up easily. And again, I don't need the full blue book with all the commas and abbreviations and all of that. Again, I ask evaluation questions. I ask you evaluate these resources. Familiarity is not a good basis. I hope the reason you're taking this class is to learn about new resources. So preferring something just because you know it is not a good reason to say that it's a better resource. A good reason to say it's a better resource is because it has better features. Like I was saying, on Lexis, they have those topic summaries. On Lexis, the advanced search is easier to get to for law reviews. Westlaw allows me to sort by most cited. Those are examples of why I might prefer one or the other. I was looking at a treatise with Chrissy, I think it was. It had a terrible index. That's an evaluation. Okay, so those are the instructions. Oh, the other thing is, I suspect this is not a typical experience for you in law school assignments. So if you don't understand what I mean by something, if you don't understand what I'm expecting, please ask. Again, it's all part of class participation, so that's a good thing. And I want this to be as valuable an exercise for you as possible. You're going to learn research by doing research. I don't want you spending a lot of time struggling by what on earth does she mean by. Okay, so taking a quick look at the assignment. So I'm asking you to look at encyclopedias on page 2. So read carefully, though. I tried to make it as clear as I can, but I can't promise you that it makes sense to everybody. So I'm asking you to choose Lexis or Westlaw and just to highlight one. If you want to bold it, if you want to make it a different color, I don't care. Just tell me which one you used. Likewise, I'm asking you to search either ALR, AmJur, or CJS. You don't have to do all three, so save yourself some time, again, by reading carefully and following the instructions. Just choose one of those and then answer those questions. I'm also asking you to answer those same questions in New York jurisprudence, New York Jur abbreviated, and again, put your answer in the table, again, on the Word document. So that's for encyclopedias. And then you see, turning to page 3, question 8, rate each encyclopedia. So there's one of those evaluation questions. So I'm asking you to rate 1 to 5. So you see a column 1 to 5 for each of the ways that you've either resources or ways that you've searched, and then give me your explanation. Why did you rate it a 1? Why did you rate it a 5? I ask you to search the web. Again, question 2. When I ask you to find relevant anything, relevant secondary sources, relevant sections, especially relevant cases, as well as relevant statutes, spend a little bit of time, but don't spend hours reading cases. Now, that's not the way you should practice law. So this is a lot counterintuitive. But this is a research class. This isn't a class on ERISA law. This isn't a class on the law of the issue of this hypothetical. So look through the case, make your best judgment, but don't spend a lot of time. I want you spending time understanding the resources. Okay. Skimming through. So again, I'm going to ask you to, again, look at law reviews. So it's basically going through the resources that we did in class. The assignment questions are somewhat similar to what we did in the workshops. That's why we do the workshops as well, to get some practice. Question 5, you'll see, again, search the index of legal periodicals. It is not on Lexis and Westlaw. Remember, we went through the library webpage to get there. If you're having trouble get there, ask me. Depending on your question, you can also ask the reference librarians, especially these days. I'm not in my office all the time or on email all the time. I'm here, there, and everywhere. If it's a general research question, like how do I get to the index of legal periodicals, the folks at reference would be happy to help you. I am too, but again, you may get quicker response that way. So ask you to look at Google Scholar in question 6, and then again, to compare your searches in question 7, that evaluation. Question D, turning to page 5 for treatises. I'm asking you to look in those 4 sources, library, Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg, find a title, and then again, just pick one treatise. I can't tell you how many times students have used this format in the past, how many times students give me the answers for all the treatises, and I feel badly because they spent so much extra time they didn't have to. So again, read the question carefully for pick one treatise and then answer these questions. Again, if you have difficulty with any of this or understanding what I mean, feel free to ask. I hope that's becoming a theme. I ask you to dive in quickly for Bloomberg Law News, just as we did last time. And then our last question is an evaluation question of the different types of resources that you worked on. This will take you some time. I would not plan on leaving this until the day it's due. Someone asked me the first class, how much time? It's impossible for me to answer that because you all work at different speeds. And you may or may not get stuck at different points. Again, don't struggle if you do get stuck, but I strongly recommend that you leave a lot of time. Secondary sources tends to be the one that takes one of the longest of the 5, in part because you just haven't done this before and you're not used to my question style, in part just because there are just a lot of sources to cover in secondary sources. So just to give you fair warning on that. Any questions? Yes, Andrea.
When you're referring under treatises, like in the library catalog, are you referring to what we just did? Like going through the recommended.
No, I'm referring to the actual library catalog. So I will show you. If you Google Hofstra Law Library, in fact, let me just do that. Hofstra Law Library. Very first link, and you scroll down. This is what I did to get to that ebook. So here's search the library catalog. You can either search keyword here or click on more options and you get the advanced search and you search for keyword. So I might search for ERISA, or the last example I used was healthcare law. So that's exactly the kind of question I mean. May not be clear to you. I hope it's pretty straightforward to answer. So now that you're all clear, you won't waste your time. Marlon.
I have 2 questions. So our grade is based on these assignments, right?
So in the course requirements handout, you have a total of 1,000 points. You have an opportunity for extra credit, adding 10 more points. 500 of those 1,000 points come from the assignments. Each assignment is worth 100 points.
Okay. And so how is this graded based on like the quality of your answers with the different words for that, or how?
So it depends on the question. Basically, it's in part on the quality of your answer. It's completing all the questions gets you a long way there. That's why I'm trying these charts now. It will be to some extent, again, depending on the question, the quality of your searches. If I ask you what your search term is and you tell me law, you're going to lose points on that because that's not really a very good search. And at this point, we all should know better. Now, that's a little crazy example, I know, but that's to give you an idea.
Like prior to February 11th, are we allowed to go see you?
Absolutely. That's why I'm saying, please ask me questions. If you just don't remember and understand something from class, please come ask. Absolutely. That's not only okay, it's very much encouraged. As you asking part of your grade is class participation, and that's definitely class participation. As, by the way, is asking questions here or lots of other things. Any other questions? Yeah, Emma. Oh, the workshops. Okay, so as I said, for the treatises workshop, if you want to finish it, great. If you decide you really want to focus on the assignment, that's fine too. So make your decision. For those who are done, hand it back to me. And I will also be looking at the ones we did last week, and I will get them back to you next time.